Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, do we have an answer to the biggest question leaving the open week?
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, we made it. The most electric open week in the nation is now in the rear view. It's back to the real deal as the Red Raiders are back at Jones Stadium for a homecoming matchup coming up on Saturday as they host the Baylor Bears. Of course, we'll begin setting our sights on the Bears, who come in as a desperate football team with essentially nothing to lose from a standings standpoint. There could be some employment to lose, I suppose, if you're not finding a win here or there pretty soon. But we'll get into that as the week rolls on. I want to spend some time today on this episode talking more about some Texas Tech specific interests as you come out of the open week. Leaving that, what's the biggest question to be answered? I've got one for you here in just a moment, at least in my opinion. Would love to hear from those out there if you have something different. Also, we'll get into the position that Texas Tech is in opening up the second half of the regular season, which is one that you obviously would take if I told you could be here opening up the season with every goal still intact as far as what you wanted to do this season in conference and possibly beyond. And I also want to talk about what context that brings with it, as there's some pressure applied now to each subsequent week that you continue to win for the Red Raiders. But getting set for not only this week, but the next couple of weeks, Chris, you got the Bears, you got the Horned Frogs, you got Texas beef to cook. In-state beef to cook. And I know these matchups are always very important for various reasons, but from an entertainment factor, this is what I'm here for, man. And a few years ago when Longhorns and Sooners bolted, and there's so much talk about, oh, we better look to the Pac-12, we better do this, we better do that. I realized, and I guess I knew it already, but as a fan, I really realized then, no, what I'm actually here for is regional matchups. What I'm here for is in-state matchups, historical matchups. And you've got two of these over the next couple of weeks, starting with the Bears. They're a lot more fun if you win, but they're always a lot of fun anyway because there's just some different emotion around games like this, it seems like.
And they really hurt when you lose them. I mean, it's twofold. You're right. You're right. Yeah, the regionality, because you haven't had a lot of that in your conference schedule just yet, and now you're about to get a double helping of some familiarity, because that's when we saw this Tech schedule released and the order of the opponents and all those things. It is really foreign to see both Arizona schools and then Cincinnati, and that's what you've used to get to your 3-0 league leading standing, and now you get a couple of in-state opponents back-to-back weeks, one home and one away, that are both struggling. And I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but it's a bit tricky. I'll just say that, where they kind of are in the we have nothing to lose scenario, and you certainly do based on the way that you've started this thing out. But there's and typically it is this way. I mean, it was this way with Abilene Christian. It was this way with North Texas, but Baylor and TCU are going to be no different. There's a lot of familiarity and a lot of crossover with rosters, coaching staffs, and all those things where, you know a lot of the folks on the other side. I mean, coming up this week, in Lubbock, you'll have Sawyer Robertson, who basically Matt Wells and staff chose Baron Morton over Sawyer Robertson, who went to Lubbock Coronado. And I think there was some frustration there and some what's going on, and so he will come in motivated, assuming that he is still the starter, and I would expect that unless we hear something different about DeQuan Finn's shoulder injury.
Can I ask you about that? Because I was actually texting with a Matador Mob insider, our guy Justin, over the weekend about this, who was wondering a little more background on how this came to be, because he was a Mike Leach recruit, obviously, before the Pirates passing, and just a general thought about whether or not Texas Tech was disinterested? Was he more interested in Mike Leach than, say, interested in what was going on at Texas Tech? But it kind of sounds like maybe, as you just outlined there, the Red Raiders had somebody else they favored over him.
Yeah, the previous staff just made the choice of they chose Baron. I mean, you typically take one guy, okay, a year.
Yeah.
They chose Baron Morton over Sawyer Robertson and a variety of others. That's just the tricky part about that position and recruiting it, because each school typically just takes the one, and that's why that position a lot of times gets committed first at a lot of schools, just because once that spot in that class that school is taken, it starts to snowball, and guys start to realize, okay, I better, I've got 4 or 5 offers. I better grab one of these before, some of these things fill up. But he's by all accounts a great kid. I think he's played pretty good this year. Obviously, he was at Mississippi State, and then when that whole situation unfolded, he transferred to Baylor. He's a very capable player, a dual threat, and all that. But you've got, it doesn't stop there, because Kyler Jordan is a Lubbock Cooper kid who's going to start at outside linebacker for Baylor. I think he would have loved to have been offered but that was the previous staff, and they just weren't real sure where he would fit in, what position he would play. Anyway, he got offered by Baylor and took it. And then there's the Steve Linton aspect. Yep. I think if you wanted to have Steve Linton come back, you could have potentially made that happen. I totally understood Tech's stance on this based on he kind of was always dinged up, and then he kind of, from my end of it, it seemed like he kind of checked out. He's played really good for Baylor. He's got a couple of sacks this year, but then he's also been, I guess, while it wasn't too publicized, I think Randy even he was suspended for a game or sat out a game versus BYU a couple of weeks ago. So the troubles continue, I guess. But bottom line, and then obviously the biggest is Joey Aranda, all the crossover with the coaching staff, some of the folks that spent time in Waco. So there'll be a lot of meaning to this game, and that's what makes it fun. But that's also why the regional matchups are so much fun, because there is so much familiarity. And you probably, like I do, know plenty of people that went to Baylor or root for Baylor or whatever, and I don't know anybody that went or roots for Cincinnati or either one of the Arizona schools. Yeah. By the way, shout out to the Sun Devils, Kenny Dillingham. We are a fan, sir. Keep doing your thing. Every win you get helps the old Red Raiders. Thanks a lot, Brent Brennan. You and your leafy necklace spit the bit again. Not going well there in the dirty tea that they call Tucson. But yeah, appreciate the folks in Tempe for taking care of their business late on a Friday night. So didn't mean to veer off, but there you go.
Yeah, one of the all-time post-game interviews on the field from Kenny Dillingham as he was swallowed up by a field rush and looked like he was happy to be. So always enjoy seeing that kind of excitement and enthusiasm after a big win for the Sun Devils, who somehow wind up in a top 25 poll that also feature – oh, wait, no, I'm checking my notes. Doesn't feature Texas Tech this week. That makes total sense. Chris, it was fun to watch – obviously, Tech take on programs like UT or the Aggies, and there were a hell of a lot more people that cared about those programs and were hurt whenever their teams were beaten by Texas Tech as compared to Baylor or Texas Christian. As we're trying to drum this up, the fervor is not quite the same. But I think even in those years where you were playing all of the above, you'd love to beat UT or A&M, but you weren't quite engaged in as many head-to-head recruiting battles that could have potentially been swayed one way or another in those circumstances. Even in those years where you had all these guys on your schedule, you'd always get back to a Texas Christian matchup or a Baylor matchup and think, man, this is really impactful from a recruiting standpoint, whatever way you want to process that, because there were a ton of head-to-head matchups. And I think for the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, but that still remains the same.
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting there shaking my head as you're talking about that, because there's plenty of matchups that went on in June. And just to be honest with you, you lost several people to Baylor and to TCU. That's not over with yet. I think you're still, but there can be some impact on the head-to-head matchup as it relates to some of that as we go forward. It's not the end-all be-all, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And I would say, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. I think Texas Tech has viewed the revenue sharing and has gone about it a bit differently than the folks in Waco and in Fort Worth have. What that ultimately means, I'm not real sure, but I think that even going back to the summer, James Blanchard even sending out some cryptic tweaks about, just not addressed to anybody, just kind of one of those, hey, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying about some of the dollar figures promised to true freshmen, which is what I think helped TCU and Baylor land some of these players. And I think Texas Tech trying to be a bit more prudent on trying to figure out what this is all going to look like and not trying to skew their funds, their allocated funds or their potential allocated funds toward guys that have never done it to this point yet. And maybe you need to worry about more of your upper class and taking care of those as opposed to guys that you're just kind of promising to get in. And then, maybe you're a couple of 3 years away, different,
Yeah.
And so your recruiting class ranking doesn't look near as good. That's not the end all be all, but on some of those head-to-head matchups, I think that was pretty widely speculated on, and even in message board circles. And I think that James Blanchard would even have added to that speculation by some of the things after certain kids committed to Baylor and or TCU. So anyway, that's an aside. We'll see who ends up being right. And again, you're not to signing day yet, but to your point, very much head-to-head with Baylor and TCU on a lot of kids. Absolutely. Yeah. Not just portal, but high school kids as well.
So leaving the open week and getting ready for Baylor, I have what I think is at least my number one question. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And they're not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to find the right hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive for you. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within only 24 hours. That's lightning fast. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier as well. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker, plus more effective. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions apply. So leaving the open week and getting ready for Baylor, I have what I think is at least my number one question. And this isn't about the Tech-Baylor matchup. We'll have some other questions about that as the week rolls along. But leaving the open week, I just simply am wondering, did we get healthier? Because that seemed like it was the biggest priority of having some time off. If you feel like there's something that trumps that, by all means, kick it at me. But the prominence of the player that has been on, or players that have been on the injury list, and the number of players that have been on the injury list, obviously not lost on any Tech fan as we're thinking about guys like Chapman Lewis or Amir Washington, Isaac Smith, Josh Kelly, even a little hobbled going into it. And even some of those who in weeks gone by were questionable, guys like Braylon Lux. I mean, I really don't know of a bigger storyline going into the open week and coming out of it than the injury report. I mean, we talked a lot about, hey, this week from an entertainment value standpoint, I hated it as a fan. I wanted to be right back out there, but I know it was good for the team and something that probably came at a great time. And Coach McGuire was talking, I think, midweek or close to it last week about Amir Washington practicing, Isaac Smith practicing. Still described Chapman Lewis as trending in the right direction, so didn't say that he was practicing necessarily. But that's going to be what I'm wondering about as we gather to hear from Coach McGuire again to kick off this week. Be curious to see what that injury report looks like. And I guess I'll just be hoping that, some time off did get you a little healthier coming out of it. What do you think?
Yeah, and we'll ultimately know a bit more about this later today when that injury report comes out. I would say, it's funny how your season sets up. You played 6 straight, and then you have this bye week that you're just coming off of. Now you're going to play 4 straight, then you're going to have another bye week, and then you're going to play 2. So it's 6-4-2. And I think that's the goal of any team when you kind of take the foot off the gas and everything, and mental break and all that stuff that goes with it, is that you do heal up a bit. I don't. The guy that I probably feel least great about, like for this week or the short term, would be Chapman Lewis.
Yeah.
But Amir Washington for personal reasons, but he practiced last week according to Coach McGuire. Isaac Smith with a head situation, but he's practicing. I'm going to take that as a thumbs up. Josh Kelly, I think that is, an off week probably does worlds of good for a guy like him, your best receiver. Or certainly one of your best receivers, if not one of your best players. Even further, like the Dylan Shaw, Jalen Peoples. You mentioned Braylon Lux, who's been dealing with a hamstring injury, and I think being able to manage that and not stress it and give it a bit more time, which is typically what those hamstrings sometimes take. And a lot of times you don't have it. I don't have it to give.
Right.
I need you to work right now. And when I open up and run and chase this dude down the field, I need it to work and all those things. But a week off certainly would help. So short of some boating, hunting, mischief that went on during the bye weekend or whatever, I'm going to assume that you're much healthier. That doesn't count a Daterate, doesn't count Spencer.
Yeah.
But you may have your best allotment of defensive personnel going into this game as you've had really since the season began. We would hope. So
Yeah.
we'll see. And two, I think it's probably good for Barron and just to get a break and heal up and just kind of the mental reset. Taj Brooks, who takes a lot of hits. Don't discount that aspect of those guys too. Because now what you worry about is, okay, is your timing thrown off? Is your chemistry and rhythm thrown off because you've been off for a week? Now Baylor would be doing the same thing, but you get right and you get to get away from it. But I mean, I would think about this bye week as much as the guys that we've mentioned would be just as good for guys like Barron and Taj as anybody.
Yeah.
That are in the fire and have been put through it and have been hit and all those things, and that they have been obviously crucial to what you're trying to get done here.
Jordan Sanford, probably a guy we need to mention
yes.
as well. So,
yes,
the list. It's been a lengthy one, and I'm sure it'll be another very intriguing injury report to consider and parse through as we get that coming up from the program to kick off the week. To wrap up our conversation today, Chris, I really just wanted to get into the context of the team at this point in the season. First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last-minute deals, and I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. And of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last-minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed. To wrap up our conversation today, Chris, I really just wanted to get into the context of the team at this point in the season, which is one that has every goal still intact that you set out to have, I think, coming into the year. You've got an opportunity to pursue meaningful late October and into November football. And if you're doing that, then you've got an opportunity to pursue, obviously, some hardware as it relates to the conference. And who knows what that could bring if you were able to party in that fashion on the other side of the regular season. But you do go, I think, from one category to another. I have on the screen hunter to hunted-ish, because we're only a third of the way through the Big 12 schedule, so I don't want to make too much of it just yet. But as we've kind of been talking about with this Baylor matchup, you've got things to lose. You have expectations, you have growing pressure, and that is a new thing. And I know that we have restored a baseline kind of pulse for the program under Joey McGuire as it relates to getting back consistently to bowl games and winning bowl games. But you're trying to enter a new phase here. And this is one that, whether it's the McGuire era or just historically, is infrequent for Texas Tech, which is, again, pursuing conference hardware. So takes a bit of a different mentality, a different edge. And just to put it simply, there's pressure to be dealt with, is there not, as you move forward?
Yeah, it's what Iowa State and BYU dealt with over the weekend, and they handled it. I think that's why they sit atop the standings, just like you do. But I don't know if it's early. I should say early. If it's late enough yet to where you start to feel it, to where you and I can get into the game of your margin for error and kind of play the math out on kind of what this is going to take. But the top end of this thing is a jumbled mess. You've got 3 teams at 3-0, and I think there's 5 teams at 2-1. And you're fighting for 2 spots essentially. But you've got 6 opportunities left. 3 of them are at home. And when you look at it, call it what it is. You do have pressure on you this coming weekend, because it's one of your remaining home opportunities, and it's against a team that's 0-3 in the league, and it's 2-4, and that you're going to be expected to beat, not by a lot. I mean, that folks in Vegas don't think this is going to be some lopsided game or anything, but you'll have to, be very mature here and handle these opportunities, especially that this is one of, I guess, when you look at it on paper, and none of this is played on paper. Okay. And I understand it, because I don't expect this weekend to be easy, but if we're doing that, this is maybe the least difficult on paper of any of your remaining opportunities. Not that it works out that way, but that's what you'd be staring at. But Baylor's probably really healthy or gotten healthier. Baylor they have nothing to lose kind of thing. And you've got coaches and coach fighting for his job and all those things. But I think you are been hunted. And you've probably seen, like I have, okay, you're not ranked. You are also, whenever people start listing off, contenders, you're not really being discussed like BYU or Iowa State are, or even Kansas State after their win over the weekend. It's kind of like, oh yeah, and then there's also Texas. I just don't know if you've done enough yet to earn that praise or have proven it. You have played close games and won them. Baylor has played close games and lost them in most cases, except for the last one at Iowa State and Ames. All the rest of them were really close. That's the difference here, is you've gotten a different result than they have. So, but it's starting to shake out here a little bit, and I think this next week or two is really going to determine, okay, this is the group that legitimately has a shot, and this is the group that is just maybe going to play spoiler. And you're right now, as you enter this phase, you're in the group that absolutely has a shot. You control your own destiny. And I will maintain, Cowan, you can afford a loss somewhere along the way and still make it. Maybe 2. But if you get that second one, I think there may be some help needed or some tiebreaker stuff. And that's why I was sitting there rooting like crazy for Cincinnati, rooting like crazy for Arizona State and for Arizona. Again, thanks a lot, Wildcats. Just because all of those things can help you. And I was rooting for West Virginia and to knock off the Cyclones, but it didn't get done, and now we sit. But you're alone at the top with I say alone, but there's a trio at the top. Yeah. You sit at the top with Iowa State and BYU.
Well, and I think, like you're alluding to, not to suggest that it's played on paper or work out this way, but I think I saw last time I looked on FanDuel, you're around an 8.5 point favorite heading into the weekend. I don't think it'll be the last time you'll be a favorite this year. but probably the biggest number you're going to get. I would imagine you're going on the road and very likely an underdog. Curious to see maybe what you look like or Oklahoma State looks like. If you've done some really good things and they've done some really bad things, maybe that changes. But either way, you get the gist. It's a big one for Texas Tech, and the pressure will be building if you're able to get a win. And I think this is one of those weeks where, for all my lifelong Red Raiders out there and longtime Red Raiders as well, we all know you're trying to fight off that typical Tech tendency to just do something totally unexpected, good or bad, because that means there are highs and there are lows. But this would be one of those weeks where it would be a low if you come out and you got all this momentum. We're feeling good. We're feeling excited about getting into the second half of October, and boom, it's a dud. Don't want that. So 3:00 kickoff coming up on Saturday should be a great opportunity to continue to keep the momentum established and even build it a little further.
And I go back to what Joey said to the media last week, is that I mean, I guess you could argue that you did against North Texas, but I'm going to base this off of the competition that you're facing. You haven't really played well yet or put it together. I don't know when that will happen. Sometimes you play a season and don't ever do it, but it's certainly out there. And I think that, as Joey put it, that gives us a lot of excitement that we're still figuring out ways to get the result. We haven't really played well, complementary, or put it all together just yet. But imagine if you could put, a couple of these defensive performances that you've seen, these improved ones, together with a turnover-free and a well-oiled machine on offense. And what would that look like? I mean, I guess if I was picking it, I'd say, you know what, maybe can you keep that in your back pocket and save it for Ames, Iowa? Because there's not a game left on your schedule. As much as it's going to be fun to beat Baylor and beat TCU, there's not a game on your schedule that you'll get more credit from or street cred from whatever you're looking at, or that affects the conference race more than that game in Ames. That's just a fact. But you've got to win enough around that one to make that one really ultimately matter a ton. But yeah, there's a much better game out there for you to go get, and hopefully you kind of make a habit of that. But because again, I just go back to Baylor is 0-3 in the conference. Their fourth game that they lost was technically not a conference game, but it was the Utah game. So I'm kind of factoring all in. But all four of those, they played a bad first half at home versus BYU. Almost came all the way back, and that was without 7 or 8 defensive starters and key guys because of suspensions and some things like that. Then they played a really bad second half in Ames, Iowa. And that's not how it works. You are what you are. But I'm saying it could be a lot different. But you figured out a way to get results where they have not. But it's still been pretty close. You know what I mean? So I just don't think anything out there going forward is going to be very easy at all. But, hey, man, this is what you sign up for, and you put yourself in a great spot, and you got an opportunity. What are you going to go do with it?
Well, and we all know, as we've said over and over, each Saturday is a new one unto itself. And you can just look at some of the results again this previous weekend, for more examples of that. Was there anything that stood out to you from the Big 12 slate, Chris, that you didn't anticipate, or anything that really impressed you or just left an impression from the weekend?
I thought West Virginia would play Iowa State closer. There was a couple of tough calls that West Virginia had to go against them that kind of skewed that one, but that was a 28-10 game. Now West Virginia has Kansas State coming in to Morgantown this weekend. If they go 0-2 in that one, they're theoretically they are kind of not a contender anymore, and that could affect your last game of the year depending on what that situation looks like. I thought Arizona would be a bit of a tougher test for BYU. Now, early in that game, their best defensive player, Jacob Manu, gets, I thought, hosed on a bad targeting call. To me, it looks like exactly the way I would want my kid to tackle a human on a football field. I'm like, you did it exactly right. Like a picture perfect. And they called it targeting, threw him out. And that's the green dot guy that skews everything. And that's a bit altered there. And they were missing some other defensive guys as well. But the Kansas State Colorado game, not shocked that Kansas State won it. I want to keep an eye on some of those injuries with the Colorado skill guys. Travis Hunter, obviously first and foremost. What does that look like? In a way, you're pretty impressed that Colorado kept it that close without one of their best players on both sides of the ball, because he does both and plays about 130 plays a game. So it was just a wild week, and it was fun. And it was also weird because no in-state Big 12 team, and including Oklahoma State, played this weekend. I mean, it was a week off for the state of Texas, and for the one Oklahoma State representative. That those 5 teams just had a bye. Kind of just weird the way that worked out. So I enjoyed sitting back and letting everybody else stress about everything, and we got to sit back and enjoy it and catch up and get healthy, hopefully.
And Tech's resume just continued to, for the most part, save for the Arizona Wildcats, looks stouter. I mean, you just got teams continuing to win that you have already beaten again, save for Arizona. So make of that whatever you will. But ready to get back to it. I'm ready to get back to a little of that stressing. Call me a sicko. Call me whatever you want, but I'm ready to get back at it coming up this weekend. Plenty to get into this week as we are focusing on the Baylor Bears. We'll have some thoughts to consider from Joey McGuire as well as his pair of coordinators on the next episode as well. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one.
Yeah, that funny feeling everybody's got in their tummy, walking around, that little nervous energy you got. That's right. Why we love sports, man. That's what's fun about this stuff. Embrace that nervous energy because it's been a while since you've had some of that nervous energy, and this is what you do all this stuff for, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, embrace that and whatnot as we get closer to what should be a fun weekend here in Lubbock. But appreciate the time. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow.
Make sure you get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks especially to those everydayers for hanging with us through the open week and right back into the real deal. And thanks to those Matador Mob insiders. I had a lot of fun visiting with you on Saturday. So many just asking, hey, what the hell are you doing? I was watching college football and I was in the midst of a 48-hour family party. So was having a good time, but ready to get back to some Red Raider action coming up this weekend. If you have not checked out the Matador Mob, check out our show notes to find the link there. You can try on a free 14-day trial to see how it suits you. It's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text straight to your phone. So thanks for being out there. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.